Here we are with Natalie Martinek, the great Dr. Natalie, to discuss Thoreau's documentary, The Manosphere, and any and all interesting insights about that, including her new articles, if she so deems it. And we shall see where it goes. Dr. Natalie, thank you.
Hi, Jeremy. So good to see you again. Here we go.
Good to see you and hear you. You always remind me what a smooth voice you have when we get
Oh
on
my
here. I
goodness.
just hear it and I'm like, yes,
Um,
calming.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
try.
Great to speak with authority, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I will speak with authority. That's a good
Have an
base.
authoritative voice. It's good. It commands like attention and respect. But
Do
yeah, yeah.
right. I approached this with you a few weeks ago, and for our audience, the Manosphere is essentially, for anybody who doesn't know, this loosely connected online network of mostly male influencers, and they provide content on fitness, business, and here's the kicker for most of the controversial stuff: self improvement in quotes,
Mm.
with a focus on dating and gain, often described as misogynistic. And there's some women in the manosphere space, kind of as dating coaches, who say, "Here's the real secret about women," but it's mostly male. So that's what we're looking at. What are your thoughts as we jump into this on the documentary? What stood out to you, I should ask?
Well, there's a lot. I'm always focused on what is he not talking about? I wonder what his
Hmm.
bias, what are his operating, mental models. But the thing that kept stuck with me was, well, there's a reason why there are these, successful influencers out there. There's a need. And so something underlies that need. So I think that's where not that I justify it, but there's extremes of everything. There's going to be the really misogynistic, woman hating incel type of ends of that spectrum. And then there'll be a whole range in between of really helpful to unhelpful. So I wish he would have spoken more about that range and more curious about it than what he chose to focus on. But, it's Netflix and it's got to sell. So that's what he's there for.
Yeah, so I found it interesting that we focused on a person I didn't know of. So just for context, I'm aware of quite a few manosphere influencers because as a man on social media and on X who follows about therapy content, social psychology, you're going to get a lot of manosphere suggestions or people interacting with that. So
Mm.
I hadn't heard of the British young man who would share fitness stuff, but also would go live with OnlyFans girls to profit off their audience, but also disparage them. And so there was a lot of hate engagement going on.
Yeah. Well, anything that makes money, right? It's because also algorithms love the hate, they love the outrage. The rage baiting makes for a very successful influencer. So he had the formula down. I don't agree with it, but there's also women who are participating in it. So like you said, the manosphere, we can focus on the men, but there's also female participants that some are getting something out of it.
When I look at that as I was preparing a bit for our show, you'd written about self-serving operators as people who are the archetype, one of the three archetypes of a really dysfunctional work environment. And I was thinking of how in the manosphere world, I think a lot of people are self-serving who are going to present something as value-based, and it's going to be a formula like gurupreneurs, which you also have written about recently
Yeah.
and historically. I think manosphere gurupreneur stuff is a natural, like there's such a correlation there.
Yeah. And some flip over into the spiritual teaching, education, psychoeducation world and to help men, find their masculinity or access their divine masculine or their divine feminine. And so they become these experts. I've seen it. I have a friend whose brother-in-law, he's one of them. And I know a background about this person and struggled with depression, anxiety, but has had a very, very comfortable life, very high profile parents. Um, you know, affluent. So not to say that that's going to buffer against adversity, but for him to suddenly come out as this male influencer and supporting young men to be empowered and have, healthy masculinity. Where's your training? Where's your background? Where's your actual adversity where you've had to grow? He's still a boy acting like a man and trying to educate the man. He still hasn't left the adolescent, like the, I guess, male equivalent of maidens, but is
Mm.
is putting on the performance of embodied men. There's been like it. Lots of they're everywhere. Like, okay, go make your money, go find your audience. Hopefully you can help. As long as you're not um, turning men against women. That's the thing. You have issues, you have distress, deal with that. Stop externalizing and blaming someone because no difference. Let's blame the patriarchy for my distress and me not getting my way. And not talking about abuse, but I'm talking about just general distress, unhappiness, dissatisfaction. I'd rather just look for the problems out there instead of examining what my beliefs are, expectations, and how they might be flawed. And that's how I can create some change in my mindset, in my belief system, so that maybe I can feel a little bit more in control of my life. It's no different with these men.
So excellently said. I would like to add that 80% of suicide deaths in the United States in 2019 were men, and I need to see what we're always a few years behind with stats. Um, in men, depression is so different sometimes in appearance with substance use, irritability. My my thought here is all of the angry young men, and we could call them incels, a huge proportion, really need male mentorship and they need their anger addressed by someone who can contain and hold that. And online dating with women, social media, opposite sex relationships are not a place for doing that initially. You need to, or ever, you need to have men who could walk alongside. I know Scott Galloway and others now are trying to
Mm,
be that, but we're fighting a battle here that has been long in the making. And when I hear the detractions against the manosphere, the question becomes, okay, what's the alternative? And one of the young men said, "Life as a man, you're born without value." I made a note of that, and I think men really hold on to that. And for much of male courting, you're the initiator, and so you do have to create value. But viewing that doesn't have to be terrible. You can have mentorship and learn charisma, learn how to interact in a way that is not super sensitive, sort of whiny, but that isn't dark triad stuff.
yeah, that's hard because I'm thinking there used to be an ecosystem around young men, family, village, whatever, tribe,
Yes.
uncles, grandparents, neighbors, friends, maybe religion. So some rooting into culture, tradition, and secularization is sort of, and just, modernization. We've just kind of scattered and we have to create our own villages. But if we don't have these ongoing relationships with trusted elders, who's going to guide us? Who's going to tell us we have value? Or boys, men, women, anyone.
I agree.
If you don't have that you don't have that drive like innately within you. So it's, yeah. So whatever ecosystem was there fell away, and the replacement is something has to fill the void because we can't have a vacuum. So opportunists come in and fill it, and you'll have some positive, some negative, some dark, some not. But the ones who play the algorithms well get hyper visible, and like, someone who shall remain nameless, who we all know, who's now on Substack, huge audience. That's not the positive male role model. There's aspects about masculinity that there is a good message there, but it's not being packaged in a healthy way. So
Mm.
men need mentorship, but unless they know to go seek it out, not that kind of person mentorship, but positive mentorship, healthy, respectful, um, engendering kind of support. Where the ecosystem is the one that is now kind of artificially created, is not coming from family or close connections that maybe were more prevalent in the past.
So I couldn't agree more. I would say to that you can't take advice on love or long-term bonding or attachment from bitter people. And that goes for women and men. That goes for the TikTokification of dating advice and wisdom. And essentially, both women and men being self-policed with intra-gender competition to not break the party line, to not go over to the other side and be too nice. So you see that on TikTok. You see a video I saw about 2 days ago of, I would never tell a girlfriend's, excuse me, I would never tell my friend's boyfriend if she's cheating because he would probably defend, and it was our word, but not for the one for assault. It was like, wow, where do you get that? Where do you assume that someone would defend an assaulter? Like, okay, I mean, it's for views. It gets clicks. So it's so strong now, the hate, the rage bait. I know someone on Twitter who's got tens of thousands or a few up to like 10,000 followers, and he was telling me, like, I've never seen rage bait like I have this year on stuff that just makes you look and it's like, whoa, do you mean that? So I think our emotion economy, you could almost call it a frustration economy, is mounting to a point of
Yeah.
such diminishing returns. You've always got to chase that higher amount like a drug, that it's costing young people, because people who are already married together know it's all fake. That's the
Yeah.
sad part, is younger people don't know what's not real. They haven't dated before. So I think the
Yeah.
manosphere falls prey to a lot of that. People who really just say what they have to and then say, "Oh, I just said it." Like HS Sticky Talkie said, like, "I say what I have to." But all his followers know that. Now they do, but
Yeah.
it's good to know, like, it's wrestling. If you believe it's real, you're going to be let down.
That's it. So it's just, again, people selling, and it's not necessarily based on truth or even like a true holistic version of reality. It just makes me think of that there's this thing called the resentment industrial complex and feminism into that. And I think if somebody is teaching you, where their root emotion is resentment, that whatever you take on from them and you try to implement or embed into your identity, you're just going to breed more resentment. So, no wonder people are not getting happier when they buy into certain ideologies. They're getting more depressed, more anxious because they just keep tapping into sources of information, people, connections, community that just maintain and sustain that resentment. And there was something else I wanted to say. Damn it. Oh, some of the influencers don't actually believe in what they're saying, but they're saying what they have to say.
Yeah.
Some might have decent kind of background, nice friends and things, but they're spouting all this crap because they know it works. And I think that's the same with so many. Some might actually believe in what they're saying, but they don't realize how irresponsible it is to be putting it out there in the way that they are, because they're not considering the downstream effects. They're just, again, part of the attention economy. They've got to be present online. They've got to maintain their visibility and engagement. So these are the things driving a lot of what we see in the so-called manosphere. We're not going to see the healthy things that are operating behind the scenes that are, more in-person focused and don't rely on YouTube, TikTok. Because I don't even look at TikTok, so I have no. I can occasionally see clips, but I don't go into the app because, like, I just can't. I can't do that to myself.
Right. Very smart. I
Yeah,
usually stay off. It'll catch me. I do upload things there and get some really awesome recommendations of fellow therapists. And then I'll see stuff that's trending. It's not so
yeah,
therapeutic. So
yeah,
that's what happens to me. I think we bring up this dichotomy almost. You make me think of Rob Henderson. So you've got luxury beliefs that people really espouse, that are in the in club because they can afford to. Like, if you espouse polyamory but you have a loving marriage, you have the luxury of doing that because
yeah,
you are not going to muddy your dating pool. You're out of that game. And so I wonder how the relationship between luxury beliefs and rage bait that you don't believe but will be popular. I think there's some sort of they're not synonymous perhaps, but they're at least cousins, I think.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking about Rob Henderson's luxury beliefs and the things that I was just saying, but I'm like, I can't really qualify them as luxury beliefs because they're not necessarily of like the affluent, high status sort of class. They're kind of everyday people, but
Yeah.
some are. But I think I'm looking at sort of an
Mhm.
assortment across, demographics.
Demographic.
Yeah. So, yeah, they might suffer in the end from the things that they've said. Whereas when we're thinking about luxury beliefs, whatever they're proposing, cutting funding to police for people who live in gated communities and hire their own private security, they will never be affected by it. So, yeah, I could see that they're like there's a relationship or they're relatives. So some people are just saying stuff they don't believe, but they think people who are lost need to hear it. I'm doing them a service. That's a justification. So, and I'm getting lots of attention. So I'm just going to keep going.
Well, don't question. Well, it's digital dissociation. It's audience capture. So
Yeah.
you have to have really good digital hygiene if you're going to get online, because if you don't and you become you notice what gets reinforced and you drift to that. You as
Mm,
the person, the creator, follow exactly where all the likes are. That's dangerous. You're not following your values or virtues. If you think about the podcasters who, and I won't name any names, but there's one who was vehemently against men and against marriage. And then when she married, her fans were like, WTF, what's going on? And so you can be against that stuff in the luxury belief capacity when you have a good life that you're building and you're saying something popular. But the poor people who don't have that yet, if they're
mm,
true believers, they can get damaged. So the
Yeah.
women who think don't ever trust a man from someone who is actually trusting one and going to marry one, it's not helpful to your audience. And then this person had to go around and figure out how to workshop and soft launch her marriage. And it's like, well, so you have to be aware of what you're going to say and what legacy you're pigeonholing yourself into. I think that's true for the Manosphere guys as well.
Yeah. Because what you think now doesn't mean you're going to believe it, a year later, because your life can change. So how do you pivot? How do you go, oh, I was wrong. You shouldn't have listened to me. I mean, some people would do that, but
Yeah,
you just find a new way to package what you're doing so that you could legitimize your shift, even though it might be so opposite of the message you've been hammering at your public. So,
very well said.
I'm always curious. I'm always drawn to the underlying emotional states of people who end up following anyone and what has happened in their life that led them to go, you know what? I'm going to start, this person, what they're saying is right on the money. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to spread their word. I'm going to, be their diehard devotee. So I'm always curious about what's happened. What is the root of their distress? Is it they're, grappling with their identity? They don't they don't understand their masculinity, or they don't know what it is. They maybe lack values because, again, they might not have had a father or like good, strong male influences in their life. So they don't have a sense of esteem or confidence or understanding of like what it is of themselves that is valuable, because they don't need they don't have to earn that. They don't have to tell anyone. They don't need anyone to tell them you're so valuable, but some people need that. So what's lost? Like what's missing? There'll be resentment, there'll be the frustration, but I'm always curious. I might not be making sense, but there's like the emotional soup that I'm more fascinated with than the outer stories that people tell about their lives. Like what makes someone a gurupreneur? They're desperate for importance and significance, and they feel they have an important message and they want an audience and they want that attention. So it's that, again, that adolescent narcissism of needing to be validated by others around you. And pay for it, but also feel elevated and like the master without actually having earned that through, practice and apprenticeship and, mastering a craft. They just become elevated as a master. So this is what I see in, things that we talk about, the manosphere, femisphere, gurupreneurship. This is just prevalent. Everyone is wanting to be seen and heard. And some will have the devotees and some will have it as the gurus or the influencers. So as long as any of us are giving attention to any of them, just maintaining that economy.
Very well said. I think one of the things we have to keep in mind is desperation fuels destruction. I mean, if you look at the profile of someone who is likely to be an incel, they're going to be high neuroticism, and there's research on this. So, meaning very, very emotionally labile, very anxious, moody, upset, generally just seeing things in a negative way, low extroversion, low agreeability. So, what does that say? I mean, it's often being unable to interact and connect with people. It's
Mm,
being unable to get along with someone. You have to be disagreeable and see things negatively and anxiously. So, all of that's kryptonite to romance, and you have to learn to overcome it. So, and I think for the gurupreneurs, there's going to be so much capacity, or so much defensiveness against seeing their own flaws. There's going to be, we know from like the fitness gurupreneur community that it's very attuned to, my truth and my process, my journey, being a divine light. Everything you do is magic. Even your mistakes are so wonderful. It's always a way to wrap it around into how good you are, even if it's in service of a quote higher power.
yeah. Yeah. That's so true. You got me thinking now about like the role of therapists in all of this.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, for goodness sake.
Yeah. I mean, you're a therapist. You'd have lots of thoughts and
I do.
experiences in actual practice. I'm not a therapist. I'm sort of therapy adjacent, but I'm stealing a term
It's a
from
great term.
yeah. So, because I've come to see the therapist world, and this is coming from having observed therapist Twitter, or therapist X for many years,
Yes.
and that it's become the new clergy and replaced, I guess, religious leaders with that sort of pastoral caring, spiritual caring vibe, even though we may not talk about spirituality at all or
Yeah.
religion. but that role in coming in and being the authority on mental health and what is best for young people or married people or whatever, but of any age, what's best mentally and like psychologically, relationally. But a lot of these people are also not well and have their, their own hang-ups. But again, they're coming across, if you look at the therapist influencers, as they're in the know because they have to assert a sense of authority because of the title that they bring, the credentials they bring, and they're trying to attract their audience, but they may not have the actual experience to be talking on these things, just like the Manosphere influencers, just trying to get attention and help.
I like that point. I'm going to say that therapists are a mixed bag, and that's a fun, nice, civil way to say it. And there's a whole, it's very interesting because just like you have doctors who have different specializations, therapists go into the field for different reasons and then go different routes with their theory of healing. So for me, it's desensitization and exposure therapy and confronting your fears and not making negative internal self-harming judgments. And somebody who's narcissistic is going to have like the core thought, I'm shameful. And they need to desensitize that and take the rage out so that they don't actually take that out on others. So other people will have the theory of healing that you're perfect and all you need is to verbalize and confront what's happened to you in life and you'll be great. So I decidedly don't think that. Neither did Freud. Freud actually believed people were fundamentally selfish and had to learn not to be. We've kind of lost that view. It's a Christian view, funnily enough, even though he was vehemently anti Christian. But I think therapists, as your personal sophist, meaning unlike the philosophers who argued for truth and beauty, sophists were the Greek rhetoricians, the teachers of great debate. And they were disliked by the philosophers because the sophists would teach you how to orally win, verbally win at all costs. Their whole thing was spin an argument and win. So if
Yeah.
you're a therapist and you have a client and all you're trying to do is gas them up, because I've heard this plenty of times on Twitter as a complaint against therapists is, well, all they do is tell clients what they want to hear. And I would say, and I have said before, well, that's not the job. I'm sorry to hear that because the job is to respectfully help someone create change, the change they sign up for, literally, when they consent to therapy. And if it's not that, it's not therapy. It's being a friend, being a coffee buddy. There's very little
Or sometimes
what
enabler.
a huge enabler. Look, there's no, from what I understand, a lot of grad programs will take you on like money is green, and a lot of people get taken on to be therapists who maybe shouldn't. And I'm just being honest. I don't. There's a lot of us out there who really care, and even people who care who were misguided though, and end up doing harm because they, again, their theory of how people heal is off. Someone who has vulnerable narcissism does not need more enablement and pity. They need to be immobilized to change for themselves.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And they have to be willing participants in that process versus signing up because everyone's in therapy and that's what you're supposed to do now.
You
Um,
nailed it.
expect to be coddled. Yes. So there are the good therapists, but I think one of the things we talked about offline was, well, there's lots of therapists out there who want to help men, always young men, figure themselves out so they can be good men to other women or good men in society. And there's men, looking to sign up for that. But I think a lot of men are not going to be interested in going to a therapist because they represent this kind of higher authority. And a lot of these men are resentful of that kind of expression of masculinity and they want something more like them, the non therapist, someone who's more accessible, seemingly, and yeah, is more of like a similar background. They don't have these uptight qualifications. And so they're more likely to go with the kinds of people that we've seen on the Manosphere at least in the documentary. So that's something I've been thinking about, why aren't more therapists capturing these young men or able to bring them in? Yeah, because, we relate to those who are more like us, unless you're someone who's got more mature way of thinking and you want somebody who can teach you. You're looking for that teacher who comes with trustworthy information, credibility, legitimacy. A lot of people aren't that discerning. They're just going with, the message that speaks to me and makes me heard and seen. That's what I'm going to go for. And that can be kind of dangerous because that's how you get manipulated.
I think you nailed it. So I'll just be completely frank. You don't know what you don't know. And therapists often I want to pick on men for a minute because I think men make themselves, and this could be controversial, but good for views, maybe. Speaking
Right.
of rage bait, I don't
Right.
think men often make themselves that easy to help. I think you've got a lot of angry, stamping, chest beating guys who, and again, male depression can look like that. So what happens is you get men who want answers from therapy on how to fix a marriage that's been on the downswing for a while and it's already, wife's out the door. It's not therapy's fault that that doesn't get changed once that decision's
Mm,
made. It needed earlier intervention. And so you've got a lot of the men who hate therapy have had therapists who just don't get that men are struggling. Like
mm,
everyone doesn't know, like you and I do, or Dr. Paul, or any of the people on here who are mental health experts. They don't know, men are experiencing an epidemic of suicide, of depression, of not feeling like they have a place. And so if you don't know that and grad schools aren't teaching you that, and and frankly, if you don't care,
mm,
then you're not going to be useful to men. I think male therapists, there's quite a few now who are doing male retreats. There's a lot going on in the UK and Australia. There's plenty with like projects to do outdoorsy stuff with young men and men of all ages to help them camp and build skills. Men love skills buildings. I mean, it's got to be 8 years ago. I'm thinking, yeah, about 8 years ago in 2018, I went to a seminar from the lady who helped create the man therapy campaign and that Rich Mahogany character. Did you guys have that out there? Did you ever
mm,
see it? I need to
no.
attach a commercial or something. There was something called man therapy in the US. And there was a doctor who had a mustache and he looked like Nick Offerman. And he was like, men have feelings, not just hippies. It was very funny. And it was built by a woman who lost her brother to suicide from bipolar disorder from a episode. And it was all about skills building. And we need that approach because if you go into therapy as a man and you're married and you have all your network in place and you don't remember or know what it's like for men who are awkward and don't have that, you're not going to advertise for that. You're not going to be appealing for that. And you've got to grow to be that. And women can help male clients too. You have to understand the male's journey involves earning attention in a different way, a very different way. He needs to cultivate mastery, be funny, be interesting or good at sports, smart or good at sports. I mean, so you just have to do the homework as a therapist, do that. And I'm sorry to say it, being cool as a therapist, being funny, is that those are very high return on investment skills. Don't be a boring therapist. Like, have some
Mm,
pizzazz. I've had male clients come to me and be afraid of therapy, say, "Oh, I need it, but I'm kind of scared." Like, thank you, dude. Let's talk about it because I'm not going to make you jump in and share everything at once. And let's talk about how you can get what you want out of life. Male ambition and confidence can't be demonized because men are falling behind now. So we
mm,
we demonized it before as a society. If we keep pressing the button when they're already down, then it's going to lead to more articles like the ones about women can't find partners who earn more than them. Women can't find educated men. We're at a
yeah.
crisis for that stuff. And it's we have to take our foot off the gas on saying men need to shut up because they have, and it's creating some dating problems in the now.
Well, it's creating resentment and telling, so many men are willing to go, oh, I need to sit back and listen because you know, women have been silenced for so long, or, we need to learn about women from their experiences. But you have experiences too. We need to have dialogue. We need to learn from each other. So many men have to, taken more of a back seat and not giving themselves space because, well, men have been centered for so long. We need to decenter ourselves. I'm like, I don't think we need to center anyone. Let's just kind of center the
Agreed.
relationship and the dialogue we're having. That's what matters. That's how we cultivate these connections and come to shared understandings. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we got here, but I think there's something to also be said about humiliation. Men feeling humiliated by their circumstances or the way they've been treated or the narratives that they're listening to about themselves. And that's where if humiliation isn't, I hate the word process, work through and understood, that it's not like, there's something inherently wrong with me and my existence is, should be questioned. Starting to recognize all the different external factors that contribute to the humiliation experience. That humiliation isn't dealt with. It becomes freaking anger, hatred, rage, and, violence towards the person or the representative group that made them feel that humiliation. So that's something I don't hear discussed enough, how humiliation is a big driver. And I mean, I don't know, how do we stop it? Helping men build resilience through again, like adult Boy Scouts.
No, I love this so much. I have a few thoughts on it. So, number one, we as therapists have to get tech savvy. So, one of my friends, Catherine D, aka Default Friend, who is on here on Substack,
Mm.
she years ago wrote about the micro trauma of like continuous online dating rejection. And she wrote about it from a female perspective. I loved that. I love the idea of micro trauma. I know everything's micro. I know that term can be everything now, but
Humiliation. It's
I like that. No, let's say that. Humiliation. Let's say mental health. Let's say sanity. Let's do I get it. I'm with you. So, but essentially the many apps, many dating apps, I can't speak to exactly which ones, are 3-to-1 guy to girl ratio. So men are competing as a herd for like everybody's not going to win, number one. And number two, it's a very easily humiliatable platform. Like it's easy to it's some men are unskilled at talking to women and they would benefit from talking in person and learning those skills and nuance versus just sending text after text online. So you have men who are humiliated by getting no matches and no interaction at all. And they're angry because they hear other people talk about relationships and success. And so their humiliation needs to be turned into psychoeducation of, yo, dude, this is the losing
yeah,
game. You need to get out there, take some dance lessons, do some other things and mingle and build some victories, build some skills, go to the gym and learn your own body, do what you want to do, build some charisma and get back in the game, get into the game even. People who've never done it. So I like what you're saying. I think we're in a humiliation culture, like that book from Freya India, Girls, that came out. I want to do like a whole series. And I want to respond to that book. I want to read it and respond because women or men are both being sold this idea that if you look a certain way for women and you're the 10 out of 10, you'll have everything. And for men, it's like, it's about looks now too. We see with clavicular, but also it's about the competency and the swagger. You'll get what you want. And it's a caricature of both sexes.
it's almost like dating apps should come with like a how-to guide, and you will be more successful if you have completed the following. And there's a checklist of like, you can dance, you have interests, you read books, like, and you don't
I
spam
love
women.
that.
You know, like these are the things you need to work on if you want success here. And here are the different avenues. And like if you're in this country, here's the people, like just a global network of services and programs to help men and women just get better,
Yes.
building the foundational skills so that they can relate to each other and be interesting to each other.
Yes. You nailed it. Oh my gosh. I
Etiquette
mean,
classes or, things that again don't really exist as they once did. Or if at all, I haven't looked into it. But yeah, some sort of not even etiquette, it's just preparation.
well, no, listen, you're amazing because you think about Shakespeare and you think about, okay, so you made a point really, really early on that I dropped because we had so many good things we were talking about. Let me go back to it because you keep priming me on it. The lack of male spaces. So here's the deal on that, everybody, because I could easily go sideways. I don't want to sound sideways. Bowling leagues, smoking rooms, men's lodges, whatever you want to call it, men could benefit from that. And let me
Mm,
make the argument to the ladies, it's going to help older men who get it, who have successful marriages and successful children who love them and don't hate them as a father. Those men are getting the opportunity to yank the other men by the ear and say, listen, dude, you're not on the right track. Here's what
yeah,
you need. So men need male on male mentorship. They just do. And I've seen Christians struggle with where to fit that in. Usually they'll put a men's Bible study at like 6 or 7 a.m. Okay, but I think you need more. And I think there needs to be the male space for iron sharpening iron, for learning what it is to succeed. That's just how men develop respect. And they also learn how other guys talk. There's a rough and tumble element.
mm,
Sure, there's an element of authenticity and bluntness and knowing like this other dude's gonna be blunt with you and you can be blunt with him. And that's how
yeah,
you need to be. I think and women respect when men know how to be confident, have it together, and men teach other men that skill.
yeah,
So I think there's confusion on what's confident and attractive and what's not, what masculinity is. But masculinity does involve confidence and the capacity for forward motion. And whenever anybody takes away from that, it leaves women, like you consistently see, like, I want the man to plan something. Why can't men do this and that? And it's like, well, then we got to get the message out there. And we need male spaces to teach men how to do that from a younger age. And things
yeah,
like cotillion, things like balls, things like the younger men and women, if at that point, boys and girls, learning how to talk to each other at dances, at events, like 80s movies, guys and girls interacted so much differently. as teens, it's like, oh, yeah, we're talking about dating, we're talking about getting together. And it always shocks me to see movies from the 80s with teens because they act like little adults. And you see movies with teens in my era and from the 2010s, it's like they act like kids. It's
Yeah.
like they act like awkward. Even 20 somethings act like 12-year-olds, like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know. I don't know how to talk to anybody. So we
Yeah.
got to move past that.
Yes, great points. Somebody said communities are a need, they're not a luxury. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
There's things called men's business in, Aboriginal communities, and there's women's
Ooh,
business. They shall not mix because they are necessary, and you don't talk nobody knows what goes on in men's business except for the men, but they don't share that information. It's private business, and it's important because there's, like, initiations and things that younger men have to go through, and we don't have that
yes.
thing in our secular society that
No.
are the confidence building things. They go to school, they might play sport, they might get that in their sports team if they play sport, but you don't get that in, gaming. You don't there's nothing, your physical prowess isn't tested, and that's I think a major thing to helping anyone build confidence. I think myself going to the gym and going up in weights and, in my squats, and I feel amazing. Like, I can imagine it's not that different for men, but I think that's a major part of the maturation that's sort of neglected. And because there's also been messages of, masculinity bad. We don't want to raise toxic masculine boys, men. And so we have to treat them to respect women. And that means that we feminize their approach instead of allowing a masculinity to emerge that is still doesn't erase them or sideline them, but is teaching about how to be respectful to anybody, not just women. It's not like women need special attention. We need to be respectful to each other, to ourselves, anyone. And so I think the message has gotten a bit distorted over the last few decades. And you have my friend, she wrote on my Substack about her son, her teenage son, that the boys are not allowed to say anything about what they want because what they want is sidestep for what the girls want, and they would always get priority. And so if they do say anything, they come across as, well, they don't want the girls to have anything. But we got to make room for everybody. So boys are growing
Great.
up afraid to speak up and say just being honest and truthful, blunt. And because blunt is now like, well, that's just toxic. That's just aggressive. So, yeah, that's a snippet, like a tiny example of things that I've seen in my world here. But it's significant because they're not necessarily overt messages. It's the unspoken expectations and things that have become norms that train boys to remain silent and not have a voice, not be able to express their needs as well as they're growing into men.
Being told that someone's proud of you and that someone respects you is very important to young men. And again, I think not again, for the first time I'll say I'm not I think that there's edge cases. There are women who are more masculine naturally and men who are more feminine naturally. We're not disparaging that. But in broad strokes, males need to know that they are developing not incompetence, two words.
Right.
I'll say this, they're developing their competence, right? Like they're becoming competent. So initiations used to do that. You reached an age, you did something, you were a man and you reached that and the community celebrated you. And for men now, this idea that I have of orphaned instincts, essentially so men really have the instinct to fight and win, to provide and protect, and to be emotionally resilient. And so those are things that Martin Seeger and John Barry from the UK, male psychology researchers, found across cultures. And if you look at early initiation rites and you look at across cultures and times, men being taught, okay, you're earning your way into respect and you can lose it, but you're gaining it. And you have a shot at having an amazing life and keep being ambitious and also respect your community. Those things are missing. And what you're left with is what is the fighting and winning super stimulus, it's called in evolutionary psychology, or super normal stimulus? It's gaming, it's sports betting, or even sports themselves can be a way that gets sidelined. Like I think sports are throughout history a way to be competitive and it can be very positive, right? Now where
Yeah.
it gets off tracks is if it becomes an addiction with going to games or it's your whole life. But it's something where and as a man, like providing and protecting. If a man decides to send a bunch of money to a stranger that he hopes gets her attention, right?
Mm.
Like and I don't want to get too controversial, but men often try to buy their way into women's love. And you have to realize, like, okay, there's a time and place to show that you can provision. But if you get taken advantage of, because you
Yeah.
don't have anywhere for that instinct to go, but giving it to a stranger, you need to have it put back into human, normal evolutionary track of pair bonding, of meeting,
Yeah.
because that's going to be what it's for most people. It's fine if you want to be polyamorous, but most people evolved in a certain way that there's a developmental trajectory and we're not hitting it and we're getting counterfeit versions of it, like McDonald's fries instead of the way they used to be, the tallow, the beef tallow.
Yeah, I think there's been increasing opportunities for men, options for men to withdraw and become secluded in their little, caves, man caves, basements to game with other boys, but they don't, again, that's not going to help with maturation. It's going to, stunt because there's no, again, pushing into enhancing performance or to prove themselves or to earn the respect of a woman, like in all these conversations about manosphere, femisphere, you know, we tend to forget, or you not tend to forget, we kind of ignore the natural biological drive for men to prove themselves to women because they're competing for the best, and women to do their version of that to get the best man because you want the strongest, most virile, most, with the most resources to, that's the prize. And there's been, I guess, so much distortion in mateship and understanding women, female, male dynamics and masculinity, femininity. There's been so much stuff that's come in because of, I think, back to resentments. We're not getting our way. We're not feeling satisfied. So we're just going to, instead of working on ourselves and trying to work out what it is that I'm unsatisfied with, that I can control within me, we again create all the problems out there. So, or blame things out there. So, not to say manosphere, femisphere are horrible things or amazing things. They're providing needs for different people at different phases and stages of their lives. And I think that's a good thing for anyone who's had, a separation, divorce. Like, let me work out what the hell happened because I don't want to enter into another relationship where I'm just going to recreate the same dynamic. I need to understand how I contributed to the situation versus, well, so and so was, the other was the asshole or the narcissist or whatever. Like we co create our situations. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm just talking about unsatisfying, annoying, frustrating things. There's something about me, something about them, but I can only deal with me. They can only deal with them. And then together we can work out, okay, this is how I've contributed to how you contributed. This is what we're going to have to do differently if we want to get past this and not keep butting our heads on the same thing. Again, that requires an interest and commitment and maturity. And I think what we're seeing is just this kind of suspended adolescence in
There you
society.
go. Well, look at I mean, so it was Star Wars Day a few days ago, and because it's May the 4th, be with you. And I like to revisit that every year in some capacity to talk about the themes of that movie. I mean, if you look at Palpatine, he created he created Clone Army of the Republic. He created the Separatist movement to go against them, and he played both sides.
Huh.
Masterful villain, great plot because that's what happens. And you see that you have voices on either side in our culture saying, all women are like this and women are innately BPD and terrible. And you look at the subset of women they're referring to, and then you hear people talk about all men are terrible, all men are assaulters who do this and that and would treat you worse than a bear that would maul you to death. Okay. So that's not true. So you have different sides that we've been placed on to fight each other. And I think savvy people have to take a breath and go experience life for themselves and get to know the different personalities of women. Yes, men, you can meet women who will harm you. And you can also meet some who are very similar to you, have the same temperament, who have the same wants and needs. Same for women. I have clients, I tell them to go like be be open to meeting people and always know that it could go sideways. Sure, you don't know what's going to happen. Don't put all your eggs in a basket early. But I think you look at things like clavicular, you look at how he's looks maxing, and you look at how culture is when people think that online platforms that prioritize visualization are what to maximize for, you're going to get this new initiation right. Because really, that's what it is. He's created himself an initiation to crush his bone structure. There's pain involved, there's rebirth. People crave rebirth and initiations, and in the absence of them, they will create them. So he's
Mm.
done that. Other looks maxers are doing that. Everyone wants to do that. So we need voices saying, "Here's how to do it. Be your best self, yes, and develop capacity to talk to each other." Women and men have to be honest about what they're looking for. They really do as well.
That's not a fantasy because I mean, I've been married, what, 20, 21 years, coming on 22. I've had to, encounter my fantasies over and over again because it's so easy for me to blame my husband for things that I'm unsatisfied with. And I have done that and I do that. But I also go, this is a me problem. And I
Sure.
think, what are the unrealistic expectations that I'm imposing on this person because of this fantasy I hold about our relationship or about our lives and about him that I need to kind of destroy and, rebuild to something more realistic or accept this is reality. This is it. This is what it is. And just understand this is what it is and not try to change it, but work with it. And I have to adjust myself. And in all I mean, this is a different topic. In all the things I've been reading written by women who call themselves feminists, I don't see any of that happening. I see some insights, a little bit of examination, but not to the depth where they go, actually, I am carrying some flawed beliefs about relationships, about myself, about men that is getting in the way. And I am reinforcing it through the things I observe, and I'm just sticking with that same faulty belief. And I'm never going to be satisfied. So instead of doing something about it, I'm just going to withdraw and then criticize the other more harshly because it's not living up to my fantasy. And I'm going to try to, impose my fantasy on that reality, on masculinity. So it becomes a version of masculinity that I feel safe with, that can't hurt me, that, won't make me feel pain. Unfortunately, that's unrealistic. We have to feel pain. It's part of life. We have to get hurt. It's part of life. We don't need to be abused. That doesn't need to be part of life. But can't stop that. We have to, we can't stop ourselves from feeling pain. We have to go through it. And it's developing capacity to move through these harsh times again with reflection, self examination, and understand what were the beliefs that informed my behavior and my experience of this situation that I do have to change because I'm not going to get any happier. I'm not going to have peace that way. The way I'm going to get peace is by creating this artificial environment where I'm like buffered by everything and I go live off in some amazing island all by myself where I get to just look after my needs all the time. That sounds great, but you can get bored too because we women like drama. We like action. We like things. Maybe not all the time, but at some point we're going to get bored of that and need to find something else to do. And we might do that creating Femisphere type stuff that is equivalent to the toxic manosphere stuff, or we'll do something a little healthier. So those are so many different trajectories where we can go on if we are not honest with ourselves and we keep expecting the other to fix things for us.
I think that's really well said, and I want to say myself that guess what? That's the name that's what actual therapy is. All of what you said about learning what your part is and learning that you can make mistakes and it's okay. You are still worthwhile and your partner or your friends can make mistakes and that's okay. They're a worthwhile person too. So there's the all or nothing thinking, the splitting that we have culturally, which is a very primitive defense mechanism, by the way, that where splitting is very good. It's hero and villain. It's the Marvel and Disneyfication of millennials and Gen Z. And this has been a big problem many people have written about, I'm sure on Substack as well, that there's the romance and developmental expectations that were put in people's minds by the sort of fairy tales on steroids that Disney put out. Men
Very
think they can
invest-
come in and go ahead, call it. What do you call it?
It's not mine. It's her name is, I think, Francesca. I forget her last name. Fairy Tale Industrial Complex. That's what.
Mm, love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, that's very much the sort of Mick spirituality or gurupreneur space is it's hijacking human truths and spirituality and packaging them in a do this and get this instantly way. It's like trying to summon God. It's like trying to test God. You're saying, here's a fundamental religious compulsion sort of ritual you can do to get perfection. Like that's the human, we want that. It goes back to the Garden of Eden. We want to eat the apple for instant power up, and that always sells. So when you bring it up, and it makes me think, okay, yeah, selling a fantasy. Men are sold that they can be the beast or Aladdin or whatever, like go in and woo the woman with a giant gesture when that might creep somebody out. Instead, you need to develop competency and show something, be a little mysterious, let yourself out little by little. And women are taught what to do as a princess. So the prince and princess way of relating has very outmoded. I think it's outlived its usefulness. I think we have to move away from that.
Yeah. Yes, but we still have these fantasies embedded in our psyches and so many other,
Mm.
and so we don't even know we're buying into it. We're just like, I'm attracted to this kind of man. I never inquired why I'm attracted. It's just, this is what I'm attracted to. This is what I'm looking for because this
Mhm.
fantasy is the thing that's influencing what I want versus, doing some inner reflection, what I keep coming back to and going, why is it that I like this? Are these really qualities that will last? Are these, what if we have kids? What would I want? Like we don't necessarily think that way. We're just looking for the mate, looking for the best mate. And our blueprint for what we like comes from our families and it comes from society, it comes from narratives, movies, media. So that's the things that are in our psyches. But the fairy tale, princess, queen, whatever, the prince, that's embedded deep into our psyches. So no wonder we get these mismatched expectations and get upset that our partners are not our prince charmings anymore because they shouldn't have been in the first place.
Yes. Say a little bit more about that. They shouldn't be there.
Well, it prevent having, this clear fantasy of what you think you deserve prevents you from seeing what's in front of you. And you might have very good men in front of you, but you can't even see them because you're focused on something that you believe is superior. But you don't know that person. You know the person in front of you. And you can ascertain their qualities and their, strengths and weaknesses. But with the fantasy, you just focus on the ideal. It's like the narcissist; they just want the ideal. And as soon as the ideal doesn't live up to this fantasy, then you go through the devaluation, discard cycle. With a highly narcissistic person, it's not a nice experience. So it's a very adolescent or immature way of looking at an ideal mate or or men as a woman who's a heterosexual woman, it's not realistic. So because you don't see the full package, you're not looking for the full package. You're looking for something that you think is the full package, but it's based on a fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's a mic drop. How I would say it is you don't know. So learn real green flags and red flags, and you can find someone who's confident. Again, many to be taught confidence and even a little cockiness, but without mind numbing arrogance. And I think the desire for men who can lead and take charge and be fun and keep conversation going is so high. The demand for that is
Hmm.
so high that all we need are the men to step up and start mentoring. All we need are the men to talk about it. And I love that there's a whole movement now and a lot of conversation about men's vulnerability, and we need it. Let's keep it coming. And also to teach them how to interact because people are afraid. This is a point I've been meaning to bring up. People are afraid to say stuff because they don't want to offend. And I've been practicing how to say stuff and try not to offend for about 10 years in my field. I've
Mhm.
gotten it kind of doing art. And I would say there's also a point at which you're not going to be able to avoid offending people. If you've distilled something down into purely respectful terms and someone still doesn't like it, oh
That
well.
for
Young
you.
men are not taught masculinity. They're not taught what it is. Young women are taught basically a mix of femininity and masculinity, that both are cool. They get to pick, mix it and match it. And men are taught maybe it depends on the culture. I can't speak to that, but a lot of men are taught to not be that ambitious, but then that doesn't work once you hit about 19.
Yeah.
Then people don't want you to stand aside. Like, okay, you need to get ready to be a man, have a family, and they're not ready for that. Nobody taught them that.
Yeah. Or they're, on the path of having a family, but they haven't developed ambition for other things. So they can maybe provide, but they're not the ambitious, hierarchy climbing kind of dude. And they end up with a woman who's wants the ambitious hierarchy climbing dude. But they don't realize that before they get together because they're just thinking we like each other and, love each other. We want to start a life together. Don't realize the other wants and needs that we have for the other until you discover them later on when you see their absence. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going with this, but it's a complex mess. Men need men. Women need good, solid, mature women, and we also need to learn from each other through dialogue. And so I'm not against a manosphere because there's a need. There's a need, and it's just like anything in life, we don't just automatically have discernment. We have to develop it through getting screwed over by the people who are not the right people for us, whether it's in romantic relationships, business partnerships, workplaces, mentors, teachers, whatever. And so there's going to be some kind of teacher for everybody. And at some point, those messages won't resonate anymore, or they'll resonate too strongly. And you get these extreme groups, which is, what we don't want. But people need people. We
I
need
wanna
more.
put this out here. I think, again, you've got the idea of chemicals. When I talk about orphaned instincts or instincts that don't have anywhere to go, some women wanna get married and every guy they're with is a situationship and they end up having dogs and not kids. And again, that's not every case. When you have animals, you can just have animals. And you can genuinely not want kids. But for many people, there's an utter mismatch in what you're doing and what you're getting and what you want versus what what's okay to say that you want. So basically, my view on it would be that you need to be capable of saying what it is that you're looking for. We need to have honest conversations. Okay, so here's what I was getting to. This idea of people getting sidelined away and being given counterfeit things. I think we've so long denied. I think there's a tendency to be afraid that when you tell men stuff that they quote deserve, that it's going to empower men to be violent, because there's a hesitancy to say men deserve a good job and maybe the chance at a mate, because then that means somebody has to give that to them. I don't know if you've noticed this, but talking
Mm,
about anything men deserve is very taboo because it could seem, what would be the word? Manipulate. It could seem almost compulsory. So I think the issue there is the manosphere saying, see, nobody thinks you deserve anything. So what authentic people who are not afraid to say the truth respectfully have to say is, hey, you know what, guys? You've got a high suicide rate. You're not doing well. You've been told that
mm,
masculinity is whatever you say it is. You've been given no tools, but then you've been given the test. No study guide, but then the test. Let's fix this.
yeah.
But it's not going to help to be bitter and to hate women and to come in it that way, because that actually is going to hurt you more.
Yeah. You
Say it again.
also 'Cause you also want them.
Right. So, well, but that's the true Freudian. Oh, that's the true analytic truth is you never hate focusing something, hate watching something still shows you truly care enough to give it
Yeah,
your time. That's
yeah,
the ultimate truth.
yeah.
So you actually have to desensitize and truly not care and say, you know what? Okay, got to take some better pictures. Got to be okay with, rejection. I actually do need to kind of brush it off and realize it's not all my fault and it's not a life or death thing. I don't have to be so angry about stuff.
Don't be so angry about stuff. That's the kicker right there. Don't be so angry about stuff. It comes back to
You're
where the resentment. That's what we're gonna attract, things that just maintain that resentment, and we don't get very far. And so we just go through life feeling this residual anger about anything, the unfairness of the world and, how men are X and how women are Y, and we don't actually resolve anything.
Yes, the all women this, all men that. That you've nailed it there. I mean, that's
Mm,
black and white thinking. That's splitting.
yes.
We're back to it.
Yeah.
I would challenge anybody in the manosphere to ever, like, you could have one of the figures was a guy who talks about being one-way polyamorous, and he had a very rocky childhood. His mom set fire to houses. Wonder what that does to someone's view of women.
Yeah.
So you can analyze that. I see the movie. I'm like, yeah. I mean, of course, when that's your view, that's your template, but you got to find new templates, new
Yes.
molds. That's what the
Yeah.
quest is.
Yeah. And that's what I keep saying over and over. We each of us have a relational blueprint that we're
Hmm.
born into, we don't control, and you start to learn what the relational blueprint design is as you go through your different relationships, as you start to reflect on them, examine them. Ah, I notice that I'm always giving up my power to someone who's more opinionated or stronger minded than I am. And I just go with the flow. But then I end up in a situation where I'm now giving in to this person all the time and I'm resenting it. So when I try to stop it, the other person is pissed off with me because I'm doing something. Suddenly I've changed. What's wrong? We've been doing it this way this whole time. Now I want something different. That doesn't make sense. But because I wasn't clear about what I want in the first place, because I went with the flow. But now I'm resentful and they should change and they should give me what I need. So I'm going to just enforce my boundaries and that's on them. That's their problem. They have to suck it up. So that is not, I mean, I'm speaking from experience of having done that myself as I learned, I'm too passive. I need to be a little more authoritative in decision making with someone else. And I have to think about things instead of just letting someone, take things away. Even though I like somebody taking the lead, I don't like where it takes me in the end. So I have to take
Yes.
the lead in my life, and I have to be a little more involved and participate in these things. And when I do that from the beginning of a relationship, then not surprisingly, the way it continues is going to be different than those other relationships where I was more passive. So that was the
I
relational
love
blueprint
that.
that I've had to redesign for myself so that I don't end up in these unsatisfying situations where I'm giving, 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 and the other person's taking, taking, taking. And so before that, I'd be like, they're such narcissists. How come I keep ending up with these narcissists? Because they just take from me. But I don't ever think about, well, why did I give so much? What was, even though I didn't think I was, but that's what I was doing. So these are the things that we're born into. So we're going to end up in these kind of crappy situations until we work things out and make enough changes that we liberate ourselves from that old blueprint, or you can, whatever, renovate it. So you have a different blueprint and it represents more of the kind of satisfying relationships that you wanted, but you didn't know how to get there because you started off with a different blueprint. But that's what learning through experience does for you. And overall, we're just seeing resentment. People just stay in resentment land and develop all these, absorb all these ideas and beliefs and behaviors that just keep them as they are, but make them feel better about themselves, more empowered without questioning, well, what might I have to change in order to relate better to that other person? Is still very individualistic, I think. So it's about, gaining a sense of empowerment, but it's through these artificial means. It's not through, I'm going to test something out. I'm going to notice that I am not decisive enough, and that's what's turning this woman off. So I'm going to be a little more decisive. I'll try this out and see how I go. And I might bomb, or she may not like it, but maybe I like myself as a decisive person. So I'm going to stick with it. And, so it's like testing these little strategies out, unless you're with the right people who help you realize, like, you're too passive, and women don't like passive. They want act, they want more decisive.
You're right.
Uh,
I do.
these small strategies, it doesn't require changing a whole identity, just small behavior changes and mindset changes that can make things a little easier to relate to other people. And it does require getting over resentment. You're not getting your needs met through the other person, or you're feeling the feelings you have about yourself, but blaming others. You have to get through that. And again, that requires maturity. It requires good people around you who help you see these things and help you work through it. Requires that kind of community and that willingness to mature.
You have to learn, and this is where parenting has to come in. You have to learn that you can be wrong, but still valuable. Because the idea of narcissism as a personality disorder is you can't apologize and you can't say thank you. You can't acknowledge need or imperfection. And we're being groomed all the time by consumerism, which I'm not anti consumerist. I'm not anti capital. I'm not, but I am I know those things existed. There was a world of Coca-Cola and there was a world of marketing before we became a dystopia, a wasteland. So there's got to be a middle ground here. And we don't have to go back to hunting and gathering days. Some people would say we need to, but I would say this idea of being realistic about we always have to keep growing, and that doesn't mean someone's better than us. It doesn't mean we're worthless. This whole all or nothing of I'm either perfect or I'm worthless. It's very much like cultural BPD. It's very much idealizing or vilifying yourself when you really have to say, I'm a work in progress and I have some good points.
Yeah.
So I love all of what you said. I mean, it's such a struggle. But when you have people around you who can say, hey, I accept this boundary. Can we do this for you? Can I have this one? Can we barter? Can we embrace the friction, work it out together? Because we're a society without friction. You can order Uber Eats. You can do anything without human contact now. We're contactless. So we
Yeah.
have to reintroduce friction as something that's okay. Conflict can be okay. Arguing and disrespect, maybe not.
Yeah. You just made me, I just had this image as you were speaking of, like, and maybe it was the COVID lockdown thing, but
Mm,
it was around before that, that it's made life easier to withdraw. And people have developed so much social anxiety as a result that they have to, come back out into the world and baby steps, and they have to relearn how to engage with the world around them. But again, in a responsible way rather than the I want what I want way, and I just need to click a button and I'll get what I want. I
love
expect
it.
that from my men. So, and that mixed with the cluster B society where it's just stunted adolescents that look like adults stomping their way through, demanding everything, and not enough. There's nobody stopping them, or we just kind of ignore them, let them be, and do our own thing. So we're living in, I guess, society like multiple societies coexisting, but not in a good way.
Well, we're all in an echo chamber. I mean, this is something I really enjoy writing about. We're all siphoned and sorted, and there's no monoculture really. This is something like you don't turn on ABC, NBC, CBS. We're not attuned to the same stuff, even the same news or the same reality. So we're in that wall-E type world, being in the chair, getting the feet, idiocracy, all the cliches people talk about. But there's ways through it. I mean, many young people are doing dumb phones instead of smartphones. They're taking time to detox. And I think that can be useful. We really have to say, and Ayala posted something about this today that women have been groomed on Disney. And I thought that was a really interesting point that you have to keep your standards in mind with that awareness. I don't know if you saw that if you ever go on X these days.
Mhm.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Basically, we all have to realize where our standards come from. And we have to realize what is good standard versus the extra stuff. Like, okay, be treated with dignity, not be gaslit, not be lied to, not be scapegoated, not be told, not have someone being constantly rude and saying it's just a joke. Great. Add all that to your red flags, your instant no's. But then, women and men both have ways that they will expect things of the other that they have to verbalize. Like you have to let someone know what you want. And I
yeah,
think it's so important that you brought that up. That's really powerful.
yeah. Um, you have to know what you want, and unfortunately, in this day and age where people are not it's hard okay, I'm not articulating this well. I think there's a lot of people walking around who have no center of identity. They have no center. So they don't even know what they want. Controlling, dominating parent who's basically, you've got to do this, you have no choice. They never develop their own inner center. And I think that is actually more prevalent in this world than we talk about. There's no actual center. So they put on these these identities. They wear these different identities and absorb the belief systems that are associated with them, and they become it. Now I'm a feminist. Now I'm an incel. Now I'm a this. Now whatever you want to call yourself. And so because there isn't a strong principled value system, it's an adopted one because many people just don't have it in them yet. They have to develop it again through maturation process and figuring out, well, who am I? They're just largely invisible to themselves. I see this quite a bit, actually. That's, I guess, a working theory of like why there's so many activism, but they wear it as like identity. Why? Where did they come from? Why and of course there's the status aspect, the community aspect, the emotions that are fueling it. But yeah, there's for people who have more of a center, they're like, at some point they go, yeah, this isn't quite right for me because I'm seeing things around me that are quite disturbing because they have some principles or, some value system that is keeping them centered, rooted to something. Yeah.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't have that. Oh my God, this has been like amazing chat. And it's like we store this up for so long because we go so long between chats and then it just blah.
Yeah. Good lesson to me. You know what? I've got to balance the time. I mean, I knew I wanted to do this with you, and we've been coordinating it over our schedules because we both got a lot going on. So I appreciate that we were able to find this time. Always fun. You make me think, the no center is a really analytic thing. People are craving this return to psychoanalysis, and I'm actually going to release an article about that. But people love that idea, and I think part of it's a quasi-religious thing. It's also got quite a bit of talk about development and growth and what it means to have mechanisms and inner identities like id, ego, superego. It's almost we live in this world of cognitive hazards or info hazards where you hear, I have anxiety and you're a teenager. You hear anxiety disorder. You map onto that. You let that be your identity. You hear these terms and then a rocket ship orbit around it and land on that versus a core identity. You're sucked into so many different things that are just labels. So, and I think mental health disorders are stuff kids should not really know about. They should be able to know, like, this means I'm nervous. They should know feelings, but once they're pumped full of pathology terms, it's an
Yeah.
info hazard that has them think everything negative ever means don't do it or don't feel it, when really it means keep going and develop mastery. So
Yeah.
you really brought it all together with that. I love that view that people don't have a core, and that's what makes them be so pathological in their identities. They don't have an idea. They're collecting consumerist identity modules like junk food.
Yeah.
God,
Agreed. God.
thank
So
you.
wrap us up, Jeremy.
Well, men and women, I think it's great to talk to each other. and to not distill each other into the worst things you can think of as projections and caricatures. So, mentor someone close to you or get mentorship. I love talking to more experienced clinicians and talking to younger ones. Be in that in between zone. So, go check out Natalie's articles about hating spirituality. That was very well written, and about giving a shit less. I love that. I love your new article. Anything you want to plug or take us home with?
Or yours. I mean, I love how you're bringing reasonable, the background of psychotherapy and where all these words come from, and, more of the academic background of, therapy in general, because it's become so mainstream that you're
Yes.
doing some corrective educational role. And I appreciate it because of the way you distill this, you know, com- complex ideas in simplified ways. And they're short, tend to be shorter articles. So keep them coming.
Thank you. This was amazing.
Yes, thanks so much, Jeremy,
You
and,
got it.
follow
Thank
each other
you.
on our follow us on our Substacks. Well, subscribe.
Yes.
And
Always
next time,
helps.
I'm writing a few more things on feminism, so that might give us something to talk about.
Interesting.
Some of the things mentioned here will be in there, so I'm just gonna be, yeah, expanding on it a little more,
Yeah.
because I've been immersing in feminism Substack, so I've got a few ideas.
Femstack, if you will.
Femstack. I like it. Femstack.
Narc stack. Oh, I love that. All right. You're great, Dr. Nelly. This is fun.
Thanks, Jeremy. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thanks for everyone who joined in.
Thank you.